we're watching Glen or Glenda. A little bit before the VHS era, but I think a lot of its cult status would have been shared on VHS back in the 80s and 90s. So
plus, it's what we had it on.
And it's on VHS, so it counts.
It counts.
So directed by Ed Wood, who's largely considered the worst film director of all time. A couple of his films are on worst film lists, which is one of them, Glen or Glenda, and the other one being Plan 9 from Outer Space.
Yeah.
There's a lot to unpack in this one. It's very, very interesting. From 1953.
For a movie that's as old as it is,
yet
it has a lot to say about our times.
It's got some fairly relevant topics for recent years. It was a film that was supposed to be based loosely on a sex change operation that happened back in 1952. Probably, I would imagine it was probably making fun of it, or I don't know what the original intention was supposed to be, but Ed Wood came on board and he thought he was a good director for it because he actually liked to cross-dress. So he figured that gave him a good qualifications to direct this film. And he ended up making it more about himself.
It's very autobiographical.
Yeah.
Perhaps we should put it on.
Let's start it. There's a lot to go through here.
There's a lot on this one.
The very first title screen really gives an idea of, it's not trying to demonize the subject. It's not like, Reefer Madness was trying to demonize marijuana and get it banned. Like, this is actually really trying to say it's okay and it's normal and people should be allowed to live like this and it's okay.
It's quite a subject to take on in those times.
Yeah, because it's now, nearly 70 years almost?
Yeah.
The other thing to say about this is Ed Wood himself is in the film.
Well, he's the main.
Yeah, he had a pseudonym of Daniel Davis.
Clearly, this was a subject that was close to his heart.
Yeah. So one of the common collaborators with Ed Wood was Bela Lugosi, famous for playing Dracula.
That's Dracula.
He's the scientist in it, which is a little confusing as to exactly what his role is. He seems to be like this evil scientist, sort of creator, godlike character who's looking down and controlling people. And he seems to be the one that changes people, taking the men away and making them women. It's not quite clear because none of his dialogue is really anything to do with what's going on. It's all these weird, pull the string.
Pull the string.
Puppy dog tales.
Yeah, there was a lot of puppy dog tales in there.
Beware of the big green dragon that sits on your doorstep. He eats little boys. Puppy dog tales and big fat snails.
It's very odd. Very odd. This film also famously uses a lot of just random stock footage. It's got nothing to do with it.
There's a lot of filler.
I think the story goes that the producer filled it out with a bunch of scenes that are these sort of weird erotic.
Yeah, there's a whole 10-minute dream sequence.
I think it was supposed to be more that sort of exploitative, erotic.
Because that's what this is sold as, an exploitation film. This whole sequence with the women rolling around on the couch and the shoulders and ankles. What the fuck is going on in this film?
A life is ended.
Early on, we have the tragedy of someone who's taken their own life. Everyone just shows up at once. You've got all of the police and the reporters and the doctors and the photographer comes in and they all just turn up at once.
Let me see that note.
You have to look at this film in two ways. One, there's the filmmaking, and it is pretty hilariously bad in that Ed Wood way.
Therefore, it would only be a matter of time until my next arrest. This is the only way.
Odd cutaways, just randomly. And then there's the subject matter, which is interesting for such an old film. It still has a lot of fairly dated concepts in it.
One day, the little woman came home unexpectedly an hour early. He enjoyed doing the woman's work around the house. Alan was becoming a woman and didn't realize it.
I did love the fact that apparently the transvestite likes to relax in women's clothing because it's more comfortable.
A wool or flannel robe, his feet encased in the same thick, tight-fitting leather that his shoes are made of. These are the things provided for his home comfort. It doesn't look so comfortable, does it?
Well, let's be honest, most guys relaxing at home, you're lucky if there's even pants on.
But what about the ladies? When modern woman's day of work is done, that which is designed for her home comfort is comfort.
Men had their suits and their tight
Suits.
hats, which cut off the blood flow.
Yes, tight hats caused baldness.
Men's hats are so tight they cut off the blood flow to the head, thus cutting off the growth of hair. Hats that give no obstruction to the blood flow. Hats that do not crush the hair. Interesting thought, isn't it?
So yeah, some of the...
It has some very dated concepts, and it's very much what you would expect. But on top of that is the very interesting notion of it being quite positive towards
Yeah.
the subject matter, which is mostly done through an investigator talking to a doctor about it, who's explaining it, and has no problem giving away, personal patient information.
This doctor just goes with everything.
I told him the same story of Alan, Anne, as I've told it to you, Inspector. Anne was a pseudo-hermaphrodite. Even though one of the sexes was imperfect, she had the organs and the characteristics of both the male and female.
The other thing that strikes me in this film is how it is a weird film. It is an odd film, and you watch it thinking, wow, this is like David Lynch before David Lynch, especially the dream sequence later on. I have read that Lynch actually apparently does like this film. I think it was an influence on him and his style, which is kind of cool in a way.
Yeah, this is very Lynch.
See, that's like Bob coming up. One of the worst films influenced such a unique, amazing filmmaker as David Lynch.
Airplanes. Why, it's against the Creator's will. If the Creator wanted us to fly, he'd have given us wings.
Yeah, I think there are a lot of low-rent actors.
It's a passionate subject that he's working on because he's coming from his heart, but at the same time, it's doing it with no budget and let's be honest, little to no talent.
There's one thing about Edward, he was passionate.
Just for comparison, let's go native. There, in the lesser civilized part of the world, it's the male who adorns himself with the fancy objects, such as paints, frills, and masks. The true instinct. Could it be that the male was meant to attract the attention of the female? What's so wrong about that?
Yep.
1950s.
I'm surprised he didn't hit it with a club.
He has every one of my sweaters stretched out of shape. But, Your Honor, ruffles on his shirts and shorts. Really?
Yeah.
It's weird, but enjoyably weird.
I didn't hate this.
No, I'm pretty sure I saw a review years ago when I first got the tape, like 20 years ago, and it talked about this being a psychiatrist's dream and sort of in a derogatory way, but it is weird and a badly made film, but it's actually nowadays, it is quite fascinating and interesting.
I knew straight off the bat, as soon as they went the docu route, that something was going wrong here.
The homosexual, it is true, at times does adopt the clothing or the makeup of a woman to lure members of his own sex.
And they lure people in.
Is that how it works?
That's how it works.
The transvestite is not interested in those of their own sex. The clothing is not worn to attract the attention of their own sex, but to eliminate themselves from being a member of that sex.
But Glenda is having none of it.
They all have, because in both cases, it's Alan and Anna.
Yeah.
And Glenn or Glenda.
Patrick, Patricia, Alan, Anne, Glenn, Glenda.
Towards the end of this movie, even though they've been, talking almost progressively about acceptance and, embracing, living your life, then they start talking about curing it.
There's lots of talk of killing the Glenda character.
Glenn, you can kill this fictitious character of yours anytime you wish. For your happy ending, it's the only way.
Yeah, it does still come back to that, sort of curing it. And, when he finds love with the woman, then he'll transfer the female side of him onto her. And then he will have found a mother and a sister and his wife. And then he's just a man.
Then you think I can kill this second character by transferring her qualities to Barbara?
Exactly.
It is a bit odd, but I guess it is keeping in with the.
Yeah, I suppose
day,
with the day,
thoughts,
whereas
but-
these days there'd be none of this.
But it was a bit weird because after everything they've said, it does come back to
We can fix it.
yeah.
It's a disease. We can fix it.
Love is the only answer. Glenda must be transferred to you.
See that's a bit of an odd message, but
No. Yeah, at the end there, it does tend to get a bit.
goes back the other way.
Goes back the other way.
Therefore, two entirely different cases, handled in two entirely different ways, have a happy ending.
Yeah, those two. But what of the hundreds of other less fortunate Glens the world over?
It's a very odd film. Bad, interesting. It's a fascinating
Different.
film. Like this is
Yeah.
one that is quite fascinating because for many years it's been considered a bad film. It is a bad film. It's got a very interesting subject.
It was seldom boring.
So, Glenn or Glenda?
Yep.
A fascinating film, whichever way you look at it.
Absolutely.
Only the infinity of the depths of a man's mind can really tell the story.
So thanks for watching this episode of VHS Gold. If you like what you saw and want to see some more of it, don't forget to like, subscribe and turn on those notifications so you'll see the next one when it pops up.